front of colleagues, former teachers, because there's a lot of things you can just say and you don't have to explain it. We all know exactly what we're talking about. So I'm so delighted to be with you today. I'm so proud to be, I say a former teacher. I don't think there is any such thing as a former teacher. I think, we can go to the blackboard and draw that nice breath and be effective. I firmly believe. But I want to talk to you for a few minutes. Well, before I do, I want to thank you. I know a lot of you have been to Mayfield, been to Western Kentucky, have donated items, have donated money. I spoke in March to a group of retired teachers in Bowman Green, the Kentucky State Organization there. And so I saw some of those friends that I made that day earlier, and I said, I'm a one-pony show. So you can come here, the same thing you've heard then, but when you've got material that's dear to your heart, it's easy to talk about. It's no secret what happened all over Kentucky. That some of you, I'm sure, were in your basements on that evening as well. But when something like this first picture in the PowerPoint is headed your way, you don't really know what's going to happen because it's so unpredictable. And I was in my basement that night. I'm one of those redneck Kentuckians. I never before had been in my basement for bad weather. I like to sit on my front porch and watch it go by, but not that day. I spoke to the National Weather Service also in March in Des Moines, Iowa, and I said, to be truthful with you all, I only would watch the weather to see what are you going to do with your hair and what kind of clothes are you going to wear. I'm a convert now. I watch the weather all the time to see what's headed our way. And nobody was prepared for this at 9:26 on the evening of December 10th. We had just had our citywide employees Christmas party the night before. That's the only time we're all ever together. And after that evening of fun and fellowship, my heart almost fell out of my chest to watch those first responders act less than 24 hours later. I said, okay, I never did do audio visual as well. That tell my age to say audio visual. I think it's something like that. Okay, wrong. The tornado passed over my house. It sounded to me like jet engines. I didn't hear a train, but I heard almost like jet engines. And I listened for broken glass and trees falling on my house, and I didn't hear anything. And I foolishly thought for just about 2 minutes, we've escaped. Immediately, my fire chief, who I taught, called me and said, Kathy, it's bad, I'm sending somebody for you. So that night, I watched former students as they performed their duties that they had been trained for. And there's something about, and I know every one of you knows this, there's something about watching a former student who is an adult, that they're always ours. And when they rise to the occasion, whether it's a small occasion, which might be big for them, but a life-saving event, it's in our hearts. They're always in our hearts. And when Jeremy Creasy called me, he said, I can't get my doors open to the fire station to get the ambulances out. The pressure had sucked them in. You had to see them hitch his toe straps to the doors and pull them open. And by the time I got there, I watched those ambulances go in and out. Every time they come back in, they'd have to have their tires patched. One tire was patched 9 times so these people could go out and rescue. But the rescue that had happened before I got there was even more heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time. They ran out on foot and they couldn't get these ambulances out. And they ran down the streets where they could hear people calling for help. And they brought those people back to the fire station, which was the only light on in town at that time because of the generator. And by the time I got there were people there barefoot, and they truly did. All they had was what they had on their back. I don't tell this part of this story. In fact, it's the only time I've ever told it, and I never tell it close to home. But lying on the floor in one of the offices of our city hall was a 3-year-old child of one of my former students who had perished in her home. It's more than you could ever prepare for. You know, as teachers, we're no matter what comes to us, we're so good at going with the flow and being flexible, but you just can't prepare for that. And so I prayed with the father and the uncle of this young child, and I had taught both of them as well. That connection that I had made as their teacher was never more valuable than it was at that moment. So we spent the whole night there. The people who were sheltered there, we quickly opened Mayfield High School to be a shelter for them. And the fire chief called our superintendent and said, Mr. Henderson, I need a bus to come and take these people to the high school. And Joey Henderson said, we don't have any buses. Our city bus garage had just been completely destroyed. And so we had two systems in Grace County, the Grant County system and the city system. And here came Grace County Bus to take all of these people to the shelter at Mayfield. Some of our Hispanic students who came there to be sheltered with their family ended up being translators all night long. And our principal tells the story that by the mid-afternoon the next day, these girls were up all night, high school girls. He went in the girls' locker room and they were just tuckered out there lying on the mats. Everybody quickly jumped to what they could do best. So at 6:15, I realized that the sun had probably come up, and I thought I could go outside. We'd been looking all night, but it was dark. I knew 2 buildings across from me were destroyed, but this is what I saw. To me, it looked like matchsticks. Now, I'm going to tear up through this. It doesn't bother me, don't let it bother you, because I cannot talk about this without my heart pouring out of my mouth. But this is what we saw. It looked like somebody opened a box of matches, and you know how you fumble sometimes and they all spill out? That's what it looked like. I thought, where in the world do we begin? But already we had begun, because farmers, before the highway department could get there, had come with heavy equipment, I don't know what kind, I don't know anything about farm equipment, and cleared the streets so the first responders could get where they needed to go. And it was pretty quickly that the state highway department came in and took over from them and began clearing the streets out. I had already talked to, when the sun came up, I had already talked to the governor of our state, who was such a good friend of all of ours. He already called 3 times, whatever you need, and he has done whatever we needed. Secretary of Transportation Jim Ray, former mayor of Lexington, had called with the same thing, and mayors from all over Kentucky had called, what do you need? You don't know what you need at that point. So people kind of take over for you and get you through that. Whoops, I'm going backwards. Y'all, I told you I wasn't good at this. Okay, there we go. Our first responders, I think they just take over. By this time, everybody was sheltered somewhere. There were no more that needed to be taken to hospitals. And so when the sun came up and we walked out and we saw what had happened to our beloved town, I hope I never see expressions like I saw on these young men's faces ever again. It was despair, disbelief, and confusion. And we all looked at each other the same way. I had found a flag across the street, which I foolishly thought, oh, that came right from City Hall. Well, no, that flag was probably, in Virginia Beach by that time. But I handed it to these young men, and they just began to float it with much reverence. You just fall into doing what you normally do. The destruction in Mayfield, this is our city hall. It's windows all the way across the front, and everything is just, all the windows are broken, and everything in our offices has been thrown. Our courthouse suffered more than City Hall did, and even now, both of those buildings are still standing. It takes a long time for red tape and to get everything, what are you going to do? How are you going to rebuild? And so these 2 buildings are still standing in the center of Mayfield, but they won't be. I know the courthouse one, we're still trying to figure out about City Hall. We lost, in that night, we lost a water tower. I'm going to have to read this list because I don't want to get it wrong. Thank goodness, we lost, none of the schools were damaged, nor was our hospital damaged. We did lose 24 lives. We lost, and jobs that would come later. We lost our 2 subsidized government housing developments, a nursing home, a home for the elderly, apartment complex for elderly and income control. We lost our water tower. We lost our water sewage treatment plant. Our entire downtown commercial historic district. We lost 2 large residential neighborhoods, every county and city government building, and 7 churches. We had no water for several days, and so we, when you push that lever and it flushes, don't ever take that for granted, because it is not fun when you can't flush and you're all kind of huddled together there. So that became something that became amazing to get restored. It was amazing to me how our utilities quickly worked together. I live about 4 blocks from downtown, and I had water by Tuesday evening. And that, I don't know how they did it, it's amazing. I don't know how they did it. And we had electricity to most of the city area by Friday. And that happened with, those of you science teachers, pat yourselves on the back. If you teach anything like engineering, they took the county electrical system and crossed it with the city electrical system. I don't know how they did it, but they did it, and we were able to have electricity. The natural gas is harder to restore. They had just finished that within this 4th month. This is my church. This is painful to look at. This is the First United Methodist Church. I taught children's choirs there for 42 years. And on December the 5th, we had an Advent walk in Mayfield. And it started at my church. And truthfully, if I had been reading the scripture, I might have thought, when the night came around, I'm not going to go, I'll just be there Sunday, But thank goodness I did. We started at my church. We had about a 15-minute service. And then we walked a block to the First Christian Church. We had about a 15-minute service. And then we walked to the Presbyterian Church and had a short service. And then, like all good Christian people did, we had snacks and food and sang songs. Little did we know, we were saying goodbye to these grand ladies of architecture and worship, our downtown churches. And to see this building where our hearts had been for so long, it was very painful, but it surprised me how it didn't take long to realize that's not our church. That's where we meet, but that's not our church. And it was our place. Now, I stood right by there, and every once in a while I park in the parking lot across from it. There's nothing there now, it's just a dirt lot. And the day this was completely demolished, well, of course we gathered, and there were tears, but not as much as you think, because we started looking to the future. So we've all learned so much about ourselves in that our things are so precious to us, but they are just that. And we were standing there looking forward to the future, to what's going to happen next. This is our downtown before the debris was removed. One of the greatest things Governor Scheer did, he told me later that when he said this, he said, I was looking right at your face and I saw that relief. I didn't know squat about what to do in this situation. I'm a history teacher. I can teach about this. I can't run the computer to do it, but you already got a kid to do that, You always got some kid in class that you can do this and they do it. But I can teach about this later. And just learning every day. But what happened is this debris removal. With who would come to contract to remove this? Hundreds of thousands of pounds of buildings torn down and debris that's thrown all over the city. And one of the first things the governor said was, I'm going to contract with the Corps of Engineers to remove this, just get it pushed to the street. And that was so beneficial to us and started very quickly. So we began doing that. The Corps came in, we began pushing this debris. But this is what also popped up as people were pushing their debris to the corner. Just like every situation, we turn to powers to protect us. And the flags begin to pop up all over town. I'm so thankful that I live in a state, that I live in a country where we can rely on our government to take care of us. Because we've taken care of ourselves, but there's also so much you can do. And so as these things begin to rise all over town, you realize you're not alone. And you're not alone. And I can tell you, I've been with enough FEMA people lately that I wish I was alone for a while. But that I'm so thankful for all the help that's come from people like you, from our state government, from our local government, and from our federal government. This is me standing before, I'm going to tell you all's in this room, and as teachers you will get this so much. My Congressman James Comer's there, the governor's there, the Secretary of Homeland Security, my office is there, Ms. Crystal, who heads up FEMA, is there, the state, the Kentucky State KYEMS director is there, and it was my turn to speak. And you know how I could stand in front of those people? Because I had stood in front of Stephen Ox, Arlene Rickman. You know, Robert Rickman's good, but haven't you stood in front of kids that you thought, oh my gosh, just get me through this, Lord, just get me through this. And if I could stand in front of Stephen Ox and confidently teach him about the War of 1812, this was a snap. So this was something I have told this story numerous times that I never thought, I mean, you don't have time to think about it, but prior to this, the governor and I had been out to the candle factory, which is one of our largest industries in Mayfield, which had just flattened. And that's where we lost the majority of our people that night. And at first we thought, we predicted we were going to lose about 30 people there, and there was some confusion as to how many people were actually working on this holiday shift. And that's where that confusion came. We lost 9 people in that collapse of that. So when I get back to the EOC from going there, the governor had gotten there first, and he said, Mayor, the president has been trying to call you. And I said, I don't have him on my phone. It's not like it pops up, you know, Joe Biden right there with the phone. And so he said, well, wait just a minute. So he gets his phone out, and he push, and he said, here. Oh no, he said, Mr. President, I have the mayor on the phone. And he hands it to me, and for a split second I thought, okay, Kathy, you're getting ready to talk to the President of the United States on the governor's cell phone. I think teaching prepared me for a lot, but not that moment. But there's no time. You just move on. And it was truly, I don't know, it was truly a highlight, but there wasn't time to think about it. We had important stuff to talk about. More people came than I could ever have thought to help us in this. In the top corner, the small picture, is Secretary of Homeland Security Mayorkas, is Crystal, who's head of FEMA, Rand Paul and me at the bottom. My mother, who was a retired language arts teacher, who passed away 4 years ago, I promise you, I know that woman tiptoed around and danced in heaven, because on Christmas Eve, there I am praying with Franklin Brown. And I know that I never did anything in my life that she would be more proud of than to have that moment there and have me there. Samaritan's Purse has come into our community and all over Western Kentucky. They are now building homes. And this part of it, they were there. This was a Christmas Eve service as they came and opened the Grace County High School to our people. They had a big toy giveaway. We had more toys brought to us than I could ever have imagined anywhere. It was a disaster. Happens at Christmas. Nobody wants to see a child without a toy. We still have toys. You need any? Call me. We've got lots of toys. But so many people came, and they were there to comfort us. I didn't get the feeling that any of them were there just for a photo opportunity. On Saturday night, I had done an interview. Of course, it was very dark, no electricity. And I was walking by myself back to my car. And I saw somebody coming up the street, and I was trying to figure out who it was with no light. And as he got closer to me, it was my U.S. Representative, James Comer. There was not a camera anywhere. He was alone. He had just come to see for himself. I'm not a politician, I'm a teacher. But I was a little leery at first, but they came with their hearts in their hands. And I was happy for that. But then as the days went on, I thought, okay, now I'm going to see your checkbook in your hands. So they come with that and do that as well. I also think my mother would tiptoe around in heaven and she's known that Coach Calvin and her at one point. And then there was Mitch McConnell. It was raining that day, and we were walking in front of the memorial there from the courthouse to the people we had lost. Senator McConnell has been, of everyone who's come, now the governor, set the governor aside because he is a category all to himself, but of our national politicians, Senator McConnell has been the most attentive. And everything he has said he would do, he has done. And I heard the volunteer of the year speak before about the flooding in Bradford County, and he talked about, and when you have a disaster, and I hope, if you haven't had to deal with this, I hope you never do, the general split for your portion to pay, and then for FEMA to pay, is 75% on the federal government and 25% on the local government, and the state will split that in half, with the state and local government taking the remaining 25%. So early on, Governor Bushita said, I'm going to push for not 30 days. 30 days is 100% paid by FEMA. So the 30 days, they pay everything. And this is astronomical. I'm so worried that my city's going to go bankrupt. And so Governor pushed for a 90-day extension, a 90-day 100%, which did not happen. But what Senator McConnell made happen was, and this doesn't happen very often, I discovered that the split now is 90% for FEMA and 10% that we will split with the state. Now my pitch to the governor was, okay, now Andy, you were going to pay 12% before, so now your percentage is down to 5%, so if you pay the whole 10%, you're still saving money. I haven't gotten an answer on that yet, but that was such a relief to all of us to know that percentage would not be a 12%, but a 5% at the most for us. He also opened a HUD grant of $75 million for all of us in Western Kentucky. I've spoken with him frequently, and we have become friends. I never thought in my life, in fact, when former Vice President Pence came, I was having lunch with him. He came to specifically see to Samaritan's Person. Once again, never in my U.S. history teacher life did I think these words would come out of my mouth. I'm sorry, Mr. Vice President, I have to leave now. I'm going to get in the car with Senator Mitch McConnell. So, as teachers, we say a lot of things that we hear, a lot of words come out of our mouth that we never thought, where did that come from? But that's happened to me a lot in the last 4 months. Vice President Pence came in, kind of snuck in. Those are my favorite people that come, that could have a lot of hoopla with them. He came in, of course, he had Secret Service with him, but he just came in to be with us, to wrap his arms around us. He had nothing to offer us as far as, like Mitch McConnell did, or the governor does. I was very impressed with it. He wanted to come and see how we were doing. And then here comes the president. Now, I'm a history teacher, so I was just speechless. And I'm old enough that I have seen Richard Nixon as a sitting president. I have, Bill Clinton was campaigning, he came to Mayfield, and it's a pretty cool thing to see a sitting president. And I always try to tell my students, I don't care you like them, you don't like them. If you ever get a chance to see a city president or a president, former president, go. I took my parents one time to Plains, Georgia, to hear Jimmy Carter teach a Sunday school lesson. I see you shaking your head. Have you ever done that? Did you ever go? It is the coolest thing just to watch the Secret Service. It fascinates me. And so they flew, the big dignitaries, which I'm not one, the big dignitaries flew on Air Force One to Fort Campbell. And so with that group was Mayorkas and the president and the press, and I think then maybe the Brashears first and second met there, as did other Comer and other dignitaries. And they flew into the Mayfield airport on those, I'm trying to say this right, those Osprey, whatever they are. Oh my gosh, I was done for the day just having seen those. So the lieutenant governor, one of our fellow teachers, and I were to meet them at the Mayfield airport. In a crisis, people say the craziest things. And one of my dear friends sent me a text. The airport had been serving up to this point as a distribution center for supplies. So people would drive through there and get whatever they needed, all these donated supplies that were coming to us. And one of my friends texted me and said, Kathy, could you do something? The Secret Service is interfering with the distribution, with the giving away of goods at the airport. Could you call them and have the president land in the Paducah airport? No, I said, no, nobody interferes with the Secret Service. I'm sorry. Thank you for thinking I could, but no. And so as a history teacher, I would say, I wish I was still teaching so I could just tell my students, pay attention, don't forget any of this. So Jacqueline Coleman and I, we're standing out there, our hair's all blowing up because it's windy, and then here comes the Marine One helicopters, 2 of them. We see all the dignitaries from the press get off of the Ospreys, and then here it comes. I'm about to wet my pants. It's just, oh my gosh, and I had this Secret Service guy with me. Not for my protection, but just don't wander off, you know. So I'm not going to, because I'm just overcome with what's happening in my little community. And so as the helicopters are coming around and circling, I turned to this young whippersnapper, I swear he's 12 years old, the Secret Service guy, and I said, I know you see this all the time, but I'm about to have a moment here. And he said, it never gets old. And I watched the military. We had, and I don't know if they were extras, we had National Guard there, and as these Marine One helicopters come, as soon as those wheels touched the tarmac, that soldier thought, oh my gosh, that is so cool, the respect and all that goes with that. I don't know if you like President Biden, I don't really care, but it's the president. And so as Lieutenant Governor was standing there, she said, I'm so thankful that it's 2 women waiting here to greet the president. And I said, I'm so thankful it's 2 former teachers. So he gets out, you know, to me, like a movie star, I don't know, license, whatever, and he gives me a hug, and I've been told that you get into guest car 4, and guest car 4, don't wander off guest car 4, guest in the right car, because I'm so scared to death, I'm going to go to the wrong place and screw up the whole presidential motorcade. But I didn't. I got where I was supposed to. And in the car with me is the head of FEMA, Ms. Criswell. And so my daughter is back at the EOC with my phone, because I'm not a dense, but I was so scared I was going to do something wrong. But if you take your phone, you might ask him to take a picture. So just leave it over there and you don't have to worry about it. But my daughter's there with my phone. So the driver of the car I'm getting in is the daughter of a real good friend. I've had her church choir, I've known her all my life. And so I get in and we look at each other like, I can't believe you're in this car. And we didn't say anything, so I finally said, Clark, I wish we had a picture of us. And so Ms. Criswell, well, I'll take one of my phone. So here's the head of the FEMA taking pictures. And she said, okay, what's your number? And so I tell her the number, so she sends them. So I've got the pictures. And then my daughter has my phone and says, who is this? Who is this? And where's my mother? What's my mother? Please quit. You're on the phone with these high dignitaries. So it was a wonderful afternoon. We had a conference him, and when we went from the airport, we went downtown. And there we met our judge executive, and we took a tour of downtown. And as we got out of the cars, I looked at the president. I said, Mr. He had this cool cap on, and as soon as he said what he's going to say, I thought, oh, yeah, I know that. He had on this cool baseball cap, and I don't know what's happened to me. I started asking people for stuff. And I said, Mr. President, I'm going to need that hat. And he said, well, that's a very important hat. It's for my son. And as soon as he said son, I thought that's the Bo Biden Foundation. And so we talked about that for a little while, and then we moved all through the town. And at one point, the judge executive says to him, Mr. President, I would just like for us to stop here in the center of town. And we took hands, and we all prayed together. I don't know what I don't care what anybody feels about political. We'll step aside from politics. But I have stood in the center of my broken town and prayed with my president for the recovery and for the families who lost people. I don't know that you could do that in every country across the world. I know you couldn't. It was a heartwarming moment. And I don't care what president it could have been, but to stand there was in my heart, and always will be. But man, when it's time to get back on those planes, they're gone, and they don't care. They're just sitting like, oh, what do I do now? Because they're gone on to something else, and as they should be. But it was truly, truly a wonderful moment. I can't say enough about our governor. He is as genuine. The highest compliment my grandmother could have ever given anybody was they're just as common as an old shoe. And our governor is as common as an old shoe. The morning after, within about 12 hours, I will follow you today. Within about 12 hours, I made him at the candle factory, and there's still rescue efforts going on. There's still, lives are still there, are being logged. They're digging out, I think, at that point for not survivors, or looking still for survivors. And he was leaving there and going to Dawson Springs, which, was so dear to him. And before we ever said anything, we're both standing there, just tears coming out our eyes, just hugging each other. I guess other states can do that. People can do that with their governor, but it sure was genuine with mine. And I work with my fire chief, my police chief, are very adamant. They did not like the governor during COVID, and we joked about, about that, but they are converted. So they said they are so proud of what he's done. So he is truly genuine. And what he has said he's going to do, he has done. He has been in Mayfield, I've lost count now. But I love this picture. I love this picture standing there with the governor. It was so cold. I don't know how we did it that day. That's the day, and I'll show you a picture in a minute. That's the day we brought ground on the first replacement of home. Lots of people came. These three guys, the two yellow jackets and the one on the far, just showed up one day. And they had come from Ohio. They were like 2 days later, and they had tents in the back of their truck. They're firefighters, and one's the police chief. They had tents in the back of their truck. They headed to Mayfield, not knowing if there would be a place for them to stay. They just came to help. And they are so indicative of what came our way. Of course, it's Christmas, so the National Guard was everywhere handing out toys. But this is us. This is us. We are hopeful people. We are resilient people. And this is the front of my church that I showed you a while ago. This is several Sundays after it, and we are having an infant baptism in front of our church. It was the fourth generation of that family, and we couldn't stand inside the church and have that infant baptism, but we all stood out in front of it to pledge that we would help guide this child in a Christian way. On February the 10th, the governor came with the first of the promised RVs, and he set up 5 there. And that afternoon, then he also witnessed the groundbreaking of the first home. This replacement home is almost completely now. It is, in fact, I'll show you another picture here. It is through an organization called Homes and Hope. I did not know, I knew about Samaritan's Purse because of the shoeboxes. You know, we do those shoeboxes every year at church. But oh my stars, they came early to help clear. They are there now, committed to at least 3 years to build homes for our people who lost homes. We lost 64 businesses, and I don't know how many homes we lost. So many of our homes were subpar rental property, and there are programs for that as well. This program, Homes for Hope, uses volunteer Mennonite and Amish labor, but the homeowner that's having a home rebuilt is responsible for, I think, up to like $60,000 of what insurance goes in there to paying for materials. Well, on that day, here came a representative from Tunnel to Towers from New York, which is an organization that represents firefighters who lost their lives in 9/11, and they presented a check for $250,000 at our Rotary Club to buy the building materials. At our Rotary Club meeting not long ago, the director of KFC Canada was there, and he had intended to donate $200,000, but before he left, he had promised $400,000 for this. It is astonishing to me, all the organizations that are like that. I was talking earlier, Mercy Shore Help is nonprofits that I have never heard of, but they come and they stay and they take care of everybody who needs it. This is, once I've got that picture of it twice, this is rebuilding. That's the green over there is the house that we saw, the groundbreaking of that one. And then, oh my gosh, I was also saying earlier, we lost the areas, the brain trust of our community. We lost all of our locally owned breakfast places. And so I don't know where and a guy from the airport came into the school when I was still teaching and said, some parents have called and said, if they fly to this ball game Friday night, is there a courtesy car to get them to the football stadium? And I told my dad that story. That's the end of that story. Except for 2 days later, I promise you, all over town that whole team is flying in on a Learjet. They're going to land here, and they've got another jet coming to bring their fans. And I know exactly where that story got started. It was in my dad's living room when I said, and the parents called and said, is there a courtesy car? Because he took it to the table, and those men went to work on it. So we have lost those, I call it the brain trust of Mayfield. But this is one, this correspondent, it is further along than it is there. It's about ready to reopen. So we can get that wisdom going again there for us. This is one of my favorite stories, and as teachers, I know every one of you have a Marco Sanchez, probably more than one, in your life. Marco Sanchez was incarcerated in the Graves County Jail, and he was part of a work release program at the Candle Factory the night of December the 9th. Now, Marco didn't grow up in Graves County. He's from Arizona. But he was doing well enough that he could work in that program. And the deputy jailer that was there with him was one of the men that did not make it out of the Candle Factory that night. Marco had a broken leg and broken ribs, and he was trapped as well. And so he moved around enough to get himself loose a little bit and went in search of, I call him Harpo when he was my student, the deputy jailer, and realized that Harpo had perished. And so realizing he couldn't do anything for the deputy jailer, he began to work to rescue other people, which he did. And I've talked to people who credit their lives with Marco Sanchez pulling them out of that rubble that night. Our courthouse had been hit, so the jail is destroyed, or part of the courthouse fell in on it. So nobody was there. We had to quickly work to get all of those inmates someplace else. The man in charge of Marco is no longer alive. So Marco works, and when finally they don't need his help anymore, there he stands. And he doesn't know what to do. And he tries to turn himself into people there on site. There's too much commotion, they're too busy. They said, we just can't deal with you right now. So he does hook a ride on an ambulance to the hospital where his leg is set, his ribs are attended to, and he tries to turn himself in that night to a state trooper.
And he got the same response. I can't deal with you right now. Find somebody else who can. So eventually he does, and he gets to where, I don't know where he goes at that point. I don't know which jail he was able to get to. So our sheriff, John Hayden, heard this story, and he too found people who credit their being saved to Marco Sanchez, an inmate. So he starts checking around, and he locates Marco, whichever jail he's in Western Kentucky area, and he wants to give Marco accommodation. And he also wants to work on a quick release for him. But Marco turns that down. His release date was March the 1st, and this was about the middle. He only had 2 weeks to go. But we give him the commendation, and that's this first picture there when he's in his orange clothes, and that's Sheriff Hayden standing there with him. And of course the media is there, because here's an inmate who could have run, but did the right thing. He made the right choice out of all the bad choices he had made to end up where he was that night. And so Marco is just humble. He is just so appreciative of this commendation. And of course it's on the news. So in Arizona, a lady calls this woman and says, I think I just saw your brother on TV. And it's Marco's sister. She had no idea where Marco was. She hadn't heard from him in 14 years. In fact, she would later say, I just assumed he had passed away. So she calls the sheriff in Graves County and says, I'm just going to give you a birth date. Can you tell me if this is my brother? And it was. So he's able to connect with her through FaceTime, and he sees her and nieces he's never seen before. And that story is just awesome. So on March the 1st, the sheriff calls and says, you might want to come over to my office. Marco's is going to be released this morning, and someone has donated a car. So we go, and Marco's now in a nice shirt. He's all cleaned up. And 1:15 is when he was to come out and have this car presented to him. I kid you not. At 10 after 1, unbeknownst to anybody, Marco's sister and brother walk in that office. They hadn't seen each other in 14 years. You can't write that and make it as wonderful as it was. And Marco talks about how he's got a new life. Sheriff Hayden talks about the choices he made, but Marco talks about this chance that he's been given. And we all know the lives he saved, which has led to that. He's living in Graves County now. He's working on his driver's license. He hasn't been able to drive that car yet. He's working on his driver's license. He has a job. He had a whole life of bad decisions and bad choices. But then one thing happened, and we all have taught Marco. We've taught Marco 100 times. And I'd like to think that all of us were like the John Haydens. We gave him another chance. He first took the chance, but this man has a whole new life. I talk to Marco on Facebook Messenger all the time. He wished me happy Easter. He is now being baptized. It's the most, there are so many beautiful stories that came out of such a tragic event, but this is just about the best one. So I close with Marco a lot, and then I close with this. I've not been ever known for my hair. It just has a mind of its own. And so when I got home Friday from work, on that Friday, the 10th of December, and I put on the sweats like I always do. And when that tornado didn't hit my house, and Chief Kristen said, you better come up here, I thought, I better put my bra back on, because WPSD from Paducah might be over here at some point. Thank goodness I put my underwear on, because before the sun had completely come up, I was on Good Morning America and looking like this. I won't ever put that gold sweatshirt back on. I've seen it, it's not moving it's just not ever coming on. But I got a folder, an envelope later that week from Mary Vesey in Dallas. And Mary Vesey had written a letter to the editor of the Dallas Morning News, and she sent me the letter. And it said, Kentucky Mayor, a true hero. I have a new hero. The Mayor of Mayfield, Kentucky, Kathy Stewart O'Nan. At the height of the need to get information out to everyone and assure everyone that everything was being done, this brave lady stood in front of the cameras and gave it to us straight and with the compassion of someone who knew and loved the people she was talking about. The best thing was, she did not take time to comb her hair. And she's right. And remember I told you about that fire chief that I once taught, and when I read that to him, he said, she didn't have any idea that you look like that. Y'all, I've started snapping. One of my council members I taught, and we had some Taiwanese officials come to town this week, and he's a council member. He works for the school board now. And he was talking while this Taiwanese guy, and I was snapping him. We don't ever change. We still snap at them. If they're not doing what we know, they should be doing. So, this is another indication of a teacher. We don't take the time to comb our hair. Somebody needs us, I call it, okay, let's go. What do you need? Here we are. This is my town. I use this as my last slide every time. This is Christmas Eve. I told you about the 3 churches that were destroyed. The light on the rubble on the right is First Christian Church. Across the street is the rubble, what's left of First Presbyterian Church. And that group of people gathered in the middle are having their Christmas Eve service. This is my town. The most resilient people I have ever had the honor of teaching or of knowing. And while we have lost so much, this is us. We're still standing. We didn't take time to comb our hair, to jump in and help our neighbor, but we're there. And with the help of so many people like you, the prayers of so many people like you, we're going to be okay. We're just going to get it done and do it. So I thank you for letting me share this story of my town, my wonderful people, the wonderful people I have taught, with teachers, because we are the lifeblood. I said that's my last story. I'll tell you one more though. We're not ever through. We have a group helping us. We contracted with a group to help us. And so after one of our meetings, they're from Florida, and some of them, I said, let's go out to dinner and get to know them better. So there were several community members with us there, and they said, what is it about this town? Y'all are so close. Well, we're a small town, of course. And so we started telling stories. And at the end of the dinner, she said, I see the common thread here. I see why you're close. Every one of your stories goes back to a school. And they do. Thank you so much.